Yo, too, I got a major problem, man.
What happened?
Yo, you know how I moved out to the farm a few years ago?
Yeah.
Man, it's an old rinky-dink house. The roof is falling apart. Siding's coming off the wall. Man, you got anybody I can call?
Actually, I know exactly the person for that, for roofing and siding, and they can do your house, residential and commercial work.
Really?
Yeah, they're called Horizon Builders. They're started by local Hmong guys here in the Twin Cities, and they're your go-to guys.
Really? Hmong owned too?
Hmong owned, Hmong operated, and bringing value to Hmong people when it comes to reconstruction.
Hey, that's awesome, man. Yeah, because this is something I definitely don't want to DIY.
All right, so I'll get you the number, Horizon Builders.
Yeah, please do. So if you guys have any work that needs to be done on your residential house or commercial building at all, make sure you hit up Horizon Builders. They're a newer company, and they're out there doing a lot of great work. And we're very grateful for them for sponsoring us and just allowing us to kind of continue the work that we're doing here. All right, welcome to a special episode of the NoEggs Podcast. We have a really cool guest. Red is in the building. You guys may have seen her in other places, like in All That Talk.
Yep, which is her own podcast.
Which is her own podcast that she ran with. Is it
Olivia?
Olivia. Yep. And so she was doing that for a long time, and now she's in Minnesota, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about why. And also, before we get going, too, thank you guys for having us on, because you guys had us on when, right?
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah, and we were just getting our podcast rolling.
Yeah, so we were taking a lot of tidbits from them last year in the conversation, and so I mean, we're always grateful when another pair of Hmong podcasters like just give us insights and kind of share with us, and not just that, but give us a piece of your platform too. Yeah. So I think that's always. I mean, we're grateful for that, and it's what we try to do back now to others. And yeah, I think it works well that way.
Yeah,
just give each other back something.
Done a lot of great things, so I love
That's questionable.
No, but y'all have like a style about what you do, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like every podcast should have that, right? You can't be like everybody else.
Yeah.
So I think you guys do a lot of the reels, which I really like. And when it pops up, like I know it's y'all. Like I don't even have to think twice, right? And so I think that every podcast needs to have that style with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. That's all paying.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it's cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's just I'm a fan of podcasting, so I just kind of take what everyone else is already doing, and and it's crazy to see that like there's this model floating around, but for a long time like we just haven't incorporated it in Hmong podcasting, which was just real.
And Hmong podcasting is kind of like its big category right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna grab these just for audio check. But yeah, Hmong podcasting is like its own. In the last. There's the OGs like you guys who really built it in, and then we came in, and now I feel like there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and they're
is that good? Or
they took that model and they ran with that, and they're like doing way bigger and better things. Telemong, Hmong Women Thriving. Yeah. This is another. What's the other Hmong Women one?
There's Hmong
Women
I know which
podcast.
One you're talking about.
I think they are just called Hmong Women Podcast. Yeah. I listen to them a lot actually. So shout out to them. And then a lot of people doing like really cool and unique things. Yeah. But digging into it, how did you guys get started?
Yeah. So Olivia.
Yes.
Actually, it was her idea of starting a podcast because we would just like, as friends, you hang out and you talk about different topics. And so I think that, it's just kind of like, okay, let's like start a platform where we do talk about some of these issues, right? Yeah. And so I would say like we're pretty opinionated ladies, who have worked hard and feel like our voice do needs to be heard. And I feel like we do speak for a lot of other people that have those same sentiments. And so I think it was just kind of natural, just like, you know what, like, let's just, start talking. And it was a little scary. I think our first episode, there was like 24 viewers.
Man, we can't even get 24
24
viewers.
Is great.
Yeah. 24 is tough.
If you go past one, I think it's good.
Yeah. Double digits
but
is
timing,
a win. Yeah,
I think timing is like everything too, right?
Yeah.
Because like we did, it was like during COVID. And so everybody was just had nothing to do, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like right now, like, you're competing with so many distractions, right? Not just like all virtual, but like now people are actually going outside, they're doing
Yeah.
things, it's the summer. And so I feel like with social media, it's all like relevancy and like getting people, which sometimes I think like just treading that line between, you know, like bait click and like actual substantial stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I always talk about how like Nah Her is like one of our biggest, you know, like episodes.
Yeah.
But then when we talk about mental health, like sadly, it's not, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
then it's just like, if you really care about that topic, like how do you get people to listen to it? And it might not be like a podcast format. Like you might have to do other things that do get people's attention, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we have to teeter that line too, just because like we've had episodes where, you know, we kind of talk about like, you know, I would like just Yia's episode. One, I think he's a big draw, but I think there were like a few clips where I think it like there was like a lot of negative attention around it,
Yeah.
and then I realized, oh, like do we really want to put clips out
Yes.
like this, and
Yeah.
like is this what we want? And it was great for numbies, like we got
Yeah,
numbies
exactly.
out
So
of it
going
for
back
sure.
to what she was saying with the clickbait stuff, like
Yeah.
sometimes those clips help you, but is the message? There's negativity around it, and some people always have that saying like,
Yeah.
any press is good press, right? Bad
Right.
press or good press, and it is true. I think the biggest thing for us is just,
How do you
I mean, we don't
navigate that?
control that. First of all, we
Yeah,
don't control that.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it always sucks because I mean, you guys are a friend too, so we don't want to like
Right.
Yeah.
we didn't put it out there to like.
Right.
It's not. He's just stating his opinion, and I think this is something that you'll understand well because you have a podcast. Is like we understand, all of us here, I think, understand very well that it's just our opinion.
Right.
We're just
Yeah.
speaking out loud.
Yeah.
Right.
We know that like you're gonna disagree, you'll agree,
Right.
you'll leave bad comments about it, which is another whole other conversation how we deal with that on our
Yeah.
own personally.
Yeah.
So like if you're listening and you want to start something, like just know that like we are all there where we get criticism.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's sometimes there might be a day you read it and you don't love it.
yeah.
And some days you'll float right over it and say it's part of the game.
Right.
So just know that if you want to do it, that's the thing you got to deal with.
Yeah.
And
Which-
it's such like a short conversation too.
Yeah.
Like that people don't, until they talk to you and like get the depth of like what you
Mhm.
mean, like
Right.
they're gonna judge you and be like, okay, this is what this person's about, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I mean, I guess that's like social media, right? You put
Yeah,
like
yeah, it is
one
social
thing
media.
out, right? And
Yeah.
like people are like judging you based on like, oh, like they know you now, you know? what I
Yeah.
Right.
I think I do like I love social media. I put a lot of things out, and I feel like sometimes it is a little scary for people to see you and then like feel like, oh, like you're the girl that loves Bloody Marys, you know? It's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I know, but I love other things too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just that's what I choose to put out because I do really like Bloody Marys,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? But it's just like there's so many other like facets of my life that I think people, you know, they forget that. But that's my choice
Right.
to put it out, and I
Yeah.
should also know that people are going to make assumptions about who I am as a
Yeah.
person. Because
Yeah.
they don't know me, but you know, it's just like the special people in your life who are there with you in real life. You know,
Oh,
that
for sure.
know like
Yeah, it's very easy to be pigeonholed into like
yeah,
one
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But you're here in Minnesota, and you just moved here. We were talking before the podcast in April. But you're here for a very specific reason, right? Like, I know you're starting your own financial firm, and then you're going to be starting rolling out your podcast in a little bit here. So speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was really I needed change too. You
Okay.
know, I think that was a big part. Like I'd moved to Portland with my ex-husband, and then I was up there for gosh, like 8 was I up there for like 8 years?
8 years. Okay, so
Yeah.
where from originally then before Portland?
I was in Georgia.
Oh,
So
okay,
in
okay.
So you
Georgia-
went. Boom.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
sorry,
Yeah,
on this
I'm
side.
a little
from-
bit,
Boom,
yeah,
boom, boom,
everywhere.
yeah.
I am from
Yeah.
North Carolina. Like I
Oh,
grew- I
okay.
grew
So you
up-
went boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom.
Yeah,
Okay, got it. Yeah,
So
a lot
I,
of shift.
I grew up. Yeah, I grew up in North Carolina, and then I moved down to Georgia. Went to school in Georgia. Was there for like 10 years or
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And then moved to the Pacific Northwest. Never thought I would move up there.
yeah.
But I do like kind of moving. You know, I feel
Yeah.
Yeah.
like it's something to like visit, but it's another thing to like live there. And like
Yeah.
when someone talks about something, you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it also probably enriches your character because
Yeah.
not
Oh,
everybody
for
does
sure.
that, right? Most of
Yeah.
us tend to live in one place, and then we
Yeah.
really make it a home and it's comfortable to us, and then we start to think about other places and make our own judgments based on just what we watch on TV or what influences our mind. So for you, the fact that you've done, and not just like 2-3 years, we're talking like decade stints everywhere.
Yeah.
So decade stints everywhere, you start to become a piece of that city as well. And now you get to melt them all together, which I think brings a lot of character as a human being. Now that you're just as a grown up, now you have a lot of influences that play a key in your opinions as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just having
I'm
that
really like
influence.
60 years old, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of living in
Which so you've done the East Coast with, you said North Carolina. You've done the South with Georgia.
Yeah.
You've done Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
And now you're Midwest.
Yeah.
But Midwest is new to you.
Yeah.
But out of those 4 experiences so far, what vibes more with your personality, you think?
I would say Georgia. Like,
Georgia?
yeah, I
Really?
love the South. Like,
Yeah,
I
South.
love the South. And
You're
like,
a Southern girl.
yeah, because
Okay.
of, and especially like in Atlanta, because it's very, very diverse. You know,
Okay.
and I love that. Like, that was because in North Carolina, it was pretty predominantly like white, and then there was like some diversity. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, like some, like 2 or 3 Indians. You know, the
Yeah.
Hmong people.
Yeah.
And then when I went down to Georgia, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many different kinds of folks within each like sector that I would even know, you know, and
Yeah.
so, and I love that exposure. I love just like my eyes just was open to a lot of things, you know, and I miss that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how many Hmong people, or like how diverse Georgia is. If you
Yeah.
think about, like, because we had James on, James the powerlifter, he's from
Yeah,
Georgia.
but we had Chinu,
Chinu,
who
yep.
didn't. He lived there shortly, but he was broadcasting down
Yep,
there.
in Georgia.
Yeah, he was broadcasting down there.
Yeah, and we talked to Jeremy Tao, who's like
Yeah,
he's
Yeah.
film producer,
he's a director.
director.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's based out of Georgia. So like, yeah, I didn't realize like how many Hmong people
Yeah, a lot of Hmong people down
in
there
Georgia
too.
and
Yeah.
how diverse it is.
Yeah.
I always hear like as a kid, like that's where all the bad kids were sent down. If you were a bad kid, then you were sent down to work in North Carolina on some uncle's farm or something like that. That was
Jeez.
always my perception.
That's
of,
his perception.
Yeah. It could be wrong. I don't know, but I don't,
Maybe they still do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, they still do that. Yeah.
Because the good kids all live in Minnesota, right? Is that
Yeah.
No, all the
Yeah.
all the former gangsters live in
Yeah.
Minnesota,
All the
Michigan,
gangsters-
and Wisconsin.
Yeah, all the gangsters got sent down south to go work on a farm in either Oklahoma or North Carolina or
So
something
only
like
the
that.
good ones are up here now.
Yeah,
Is that
of
what you're
course,
Yeah,
saying?
of course.
they've all made it back to
yeah.
Minnesota. So those 4 places, but I think where we're going with that question is now you're in
Yeah.
Minnesota running your own project. So talk about the different things that you do have going on right
Yeah.
now, so
Yeah.
we can kind of dive into those and let people kind of know
Yeah.
like what is it that you're doing, you know, what you
Yeah. So I still work for the nonprofit that's in Salem.
Okay.
So I'm
Okay.
the CFO there. That's the chief financial officer, and so I oversee a team of 15.
It's kind of a
finance
big
folks.
deal, isn't it?
Chief
CFO?
financial officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I hear like
CFO is a
I've
cool
heard that.
title.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that being thrown around, but like I didn't really look into it. But when I did, I was like, oh, this is a kind
So
of a big
let's talk
deal.
about that real quick. Let's dive into it real fast. CFO, Chief Financial Officer. What are the responsibilities of a CFO? So that if you are not familiar with what a CFO does, what is it that a CFO does do? I'm sure it's different in every company, but can you just dive into what's a CFO's like responsibilities and what do you have to do in that job?
Yeah. So I oversee like all the finance.
Okay.
So I oversee the finance department. Really make sure that I'm there for like the board, funders, my ED, all the execs, just supporting them. So making sure that we have great financial systems, making sure that if there's any big decisions like the numbers piece, like I'm right there with that part.
Does a CFO also have executive decision in making those decisions as well, or are they just putting it to the surface?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been my favorite part. I think when you start out, so my background is in accounting. So I went to school for accounting, got my CPA, worked in public accounting. And I think when you first start out in accounting, it's very boring. Like you're doing the grunt work, you're doing the data entry. It's kind of like that picture of like the person in the corner, just like, doing numbers and stuff, which is definitely true. I think you have to start out and you have to build like that foundation. And then I think as you get, just like as you progress in your career, I think it gets more fun because you can actually make change, right? And I think that's my favorite part of like being in management. I think a lot of times, um, when I talk to folks that don't necessarily want to make that jump into management, I think it's scary for them because it's like more stress. It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Because
You
then,
know?
then it's people managing personalities.
Right. But
Yeah.
that's the only way you can make change.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you're like in a place of influence, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, I think like I get to do hirings, I get to do, you know, letting
wow.
people go, I get to do like
Yeah.
changes. And so I think that that's like the most fun part of like doing what I do.
Letting people go.
No.
Although I'm sure you get
fired. You're fired. Yeah.
That's the hardest part
Yeah,
because
that is the
you know, I
hardest
think
part.
once
Yeah.
you come into our organization and you come into my team, I want to see you succeed. And like
Right.
anybody in my organization, I want them to succeed,
Yeah.
right? So that's where it's just like I'm meeting them as well, right? So like as like owners of businesses, y'all know like it's like if I was to assist you in your business, I want like the numbers, you know, if you
Mhm.
wanted to see your numbers, how much am I making like you know, like per car, or you know, how much am I making like throughout the year, what's the seasonal, like how do I get, like those are all data points that like as a numbers person, I'm, you know, like I love being right there and meeting people and helping them
Yeah.
make decisions.
Growing up, were you a person that enjoyed like numbers, like statistics and stuff like that? Or like how do you fall into that world for you, right? I think
Yeah.
everyone's got a different avenue into how they fall into that world. For you, where did you start to discover that, okay, maybe I like doing this?
Yeah.
And yeah, talk about that. Like
Yeah,
how did you figure
so-
out that was kind of thing you enjoyed?
I was always like gonna go to med school, like 'cause
Okay.
that's what my parents like wanted
Yeah.
me
Sure,
to do.
sure.
Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like
Sure,
I
yeah.
wasn't
The traditional.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I wasn't super like honestly, like when I think about it, I could probably do anything. You know, didn't really care what it was that I was gonna do. And so I was gonna do just go and you know be a doctor. And then I think with my parents, like I just felt like they, you know, like if I'm doing something already and you tell me what to do, like I have a really hard time with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think just a continuous pushing, you know, like if I'm already going to school, like even if you say, you know, like go to school, like I would be like, I'm already going to school. Don't tell me what to do,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know? And so I think that kind of pushed me away from it. You know, I
Okay.
feel like if my parents had done a lot more positive reinforcements, I
Right.
would have just done whatever it is. to
So
make
what
me
was your
happy.
initial degree you pursued? Like the first degree that you wrote on the piece of paper when you went to school and said, I'm going for this major.
Biology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Biology,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So I was
Yeah.
gonna do biology. But honestly, the first time that I thought about business, I read the Babysitters Club
Okay.
when I was like a kid. And so are you guys familiar with the
I do not know that
Babysitters
book.
Club?
No.
So it's a whole book series, and it's basically this group of girls who create this babysitting club, but then they make money from it, right? So they have this whole little business. And then I think on Mondays they would like, you know, have like office hours 6 to 8. People would call and schedule like their gigs, and then
Yeah.
they would parcel out between the girls based on like their schedules,
Yeah.
and you know they would be neighborhood kids and stuff
Oh
like
wow.
that.
Was this based off like a real thing or?
It's a book.
It's a
Yeah.
kid's
Oh,
book?
okay.
It's
a,
kids, but it's like,
so it's
you said you read it when you were younger. Is it like a,
yeah, I read it. Gosh, I read it probably like in middle school,
Okay.
Okay.
like maybe 5th grade into middle school. But that was my first exposure to like business, right?
Yeah.
And like I even wanted to do my own babysitting club because I wanted to make money, and
Yeah.
you know, like I grew up like in a poor household, and so
Mhm.
I always knew how hard my parents worked. And then, you know, getting to read that book and being like, oh, people can make money, and like this is how they would make money, and like even the scheduling components of like the series was really informative.
Yeah.
And so I think I think I always knew I wanted to like, you know, just
Right.
make decent money. And so then did pre-med, decided I was just like not gonna do that.
Yeah.
I did get married when I was 19.
Okay.
And so that also kind of, you know, just I knew I like because my ex-husband wasn't in college, and so then I wanted to get out like as soon as possible, and I wanted to make decent money when I got out.
Yeah.
And so went into the business school. I was gonna do fashion design, I was gonna do all these things, and a lot of it was like, do I follow my passion, or do I follow what's like also like practical,
Yeah.
right? And so then I decided, okay, maybe like the whole fashion design thing is not like, you know, where I should be going with my life. And so decided to do business school. and then was going to do business management. But then I just felt like it wasn't a skill set. Like I wanted an actual skill set, not all the business management people are going to be like, oh my gosh, she's knocking at us on us. But I wanted a skill set because I knew that like, and you know, managing people, you learn that with experience, right?
Yep.
I could sit in a room all day and somebody can tell me like, this is how different leadership styles are. This is what's the best. But until you actually get into the real world, like you learn that as you know, growing your career. And so then I decided to do accounting because I felt like that was like a skill set. And I mean, I love the accounting like school and at Georgia State. We had a whole like career fair that was just for us. We had like a co-ed fraternity that really helped us like be in love with the profession.
Yeah.
And it's like the language of business. And so I just felt like it was such a, I don't know, like I honestly feel like I love what I do. Like I love that I found it. And as I continue to progress, I just love where I'm at.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Like you touched on something that I think is very like important, and I think really that can hit close to home to a lot of our listeners and viewers, was that you grew up in a poor family, and that you didn't know much about finances, and then you read this book essentially where you learned a lot about starting a business and what it maybe potentially took to operate something like that. And I think the financial education is such a big topic in our community today. But I think like a lot of us, like we grew up with very minimal education on like finances. Like even now today, like as a business owner, I'm just starting to learn what a CPA is. I'm starting to learn why it's important to like save, you know, and have different accounts into saving. And like it's like partly attributed to this podcast, or to having these conversations with maybe people that are more financially savvy than myself. But I think there's so many young people that don't have that financial training. And like what is your relationship to money like now, and how was it growing up?
Yeah. I would say that's a big question.
Yeah, sorry.
Much how do I answer that? I mean, I love money. Like, I think that money is not evil.
Yeah. It's
think
not a
that
bad thing to love money.
Yeah, like there's a lot of money out there, especially like even like working in a nonprofit. Like my ED, the executive director, the CEO of the nonprofit, is amazing. He has like a lot of great relationship that's allowed us to grow as an organization.
Yeah.
And so I think like even when I look at like some of the Hmong nonprofits, right? Like where, you know, we don't go after some of those big dollars, right? Like sometimes we think like, especially nonprofit, like we want to be passionate people and we don't want to think about the money, but money allows you to do a lot of great things, right? And like it allows you to grow, allows you to impact more people. And then like paying your own people, like you should pay your own people what they're worth as well, right? Instead of being like, you know what, we can do, you know, a lot with like, you know, a lot less. Like we shouldn't think like that, you know? And so I think I definitely like being older now and just like seeing what I've seen, like it's just like there's a lot of great things about money, and we should never be, you know, like we should never be scared to like ask for what it is that we deserve, right?
Yeah.
I think of the phrase "money, the roots of all evil" is one thing that we hear so much, and it's why it's nice to have you here because of the positions that you have, because money is a tool. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a tool meant, and how you think about it is personal. I think everybody thinks about, when we talk about personal finance, everybody has a different relationship with it. And we're so influenced by what we saw and experienced growing up, right? Like if our parents were decent with money, then maybe we took some of those qualities with us.
Yeah.
And if they're bad with money, we also take those qualities with us.
Yeah.
And being that we're all first generation Americans, going from a place where like in Laos, survival is both on a human level of survival and then money, versus here it's a lot less a human survival instinct. Like when I say that, I mean like warfare and much more financial survival. So we're all just learning it now. And so I think, like Peng said, having you here, we get to ask you questions like that, your relationship with money. Here's a question that I have. If you were to give the advice, and we're not, take it as you want to take it, but like if I were to ask you like, hey, where should I start with my finances? Let's say I'm 21 and I'm in college. I just took a bunch of loans. because I'm going to college. Like, what would be some, if you have some rules or piece of advice that you can give from perspective of somebody that's in accounting and a CFO? What would that advice be for a 21-year-old to maybe start to lead them into more secure places financially?
Yeah, so I would say live as poor as possible
Okay.
when you're younger.
Yeah.
I think luxury creep is such a real thing. So like, because it's harder for us to, like, go back and eat ramen, you know.
Mhm.
But when you're like 18, 19, and everybody else is eating ramen too, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like to have lobster pho,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
those cravings because you don't even know that such a
Yeah.
thing exists, right? And
Yeah.
so I would say, like, just live as cheaply as possible, because those things will come. But I feel like if you start living at a level that you can't sustain, it's really hard to go back.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
like, it's hard to, like, go from big house to a little house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's grand when you go from a little house to a bigger house and a bigger house and a bigger house, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't know any better.
Mhm.
But once you know better, right? Once you see how good life can be, it's really hard to go back. And when you're like, I feel like when you're 21 years old with a bunch of loans, it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, I have like $50,000 now. That's not my money that I'm gonna have
Right.
to pay
Yeah,
back
yeah,
at
yeah.
a high
Yeah.
interest rate.
Yeah.
That, and I'll think about that in the future. Well,
Yeah.
the future is gonna come, right?
Yep.
Like 10 years passes by like just like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And so it's just like, just keep at, be as cheap as possible, because all those great things will come. That's just like the natural flow of life.
Yeah.
Okay, and why do we want to be as cheap as possible? Like, what are we doing with? We're being cheap, but why is that? Okay,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
we're being
especially
It's,
especially
yeah,
at
if you
19.
take
Yeah.
out student loans, it's not your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so that you have to remember that if you're in credit card, if you're in student loans, if you're on any kind of loan, right? It's not your money. So you
Yeah.
should be careful about that.
Yeah.
So be cheap so that we can pay these loans faster, or is there be cheap so we can do side investments, or is it just be cheap because we don't got money?
Probably a little bit of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like, so this is, I guess, like, these are really intricate things, but like, if
Yeah.
you're getting a student loan, if you're getting student loans to pay for your education, like, you really should just borrow enough to pay for your education,
Okay.
right? I
Okay.
would say, like, work if you have to, like, because I do feel like when people have too much time in their hands,
Yeah.
I feel like they become lazy too.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
I worked all through college, which I
Yep.
appreciate. Like, I never look back and think like, oh, I would have studied more. Truth is, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I would have just done like extracurricular or like other things that fill up my time. So I love that life was a little bit harder, like when I was going
Yeah.
to school,
So-
right?
One financial piece of advice I got in college was like, hey, take enough loans out to also buy yourself a car, because you're not going to get that same
And
interest rate.
I've heard that a lot. Well, I've heard that a lot too with when you're in college, like people take out loans, but then because they don't have money, that's like an opportunity where they can take a little bit more,
Yeah.
and then they use it to do other things with it too.
Yeah.
Which I feel like when you're 20, I'm not saying go through that experience, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
almost part of like make those mistakes too, right?
Yeah.
Because
yes,
you
better
do have to make
in your
mistakes,
20s
right?
than in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
30s.
Yeah,
than your
exactly.
40s.
You-
But I'm
'cause
still
you be-
paying for what I did in my
become-
20s.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying go to the military,
Yeah.
but the military helped me tremendously
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
well, I don't have any college or debt because the military helped me. So I'm not saying that's one way. It is one way.
Yeah.
If you want to go do stuff like that, it is one way. But yeah, paying yours, still
Yeah.
paying yours.
Oh
so-
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm gonna be paying it for a little bit. I do have a question though. We talked about growing up really poor. So like for me, example, I grew up very poor, like, so I don't really respect money. And then I
Okay.
think I have this idea of this very Hmong mindset where it's like, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. It's like there's this collectiveness
Yeah,
where
yeah.
betan toshipana, and then like, and so it's like, I don't really respect it in a sense where it's like, if I got something and you need something, I'm gonna get it. I got you. But like I realized too, that's like an unhealthy way to think about finances. And it's like, do you see that? Is that a thing in the Hmong? Like, is that a trend in the Hmong community? And is that like harmful? Is like where we have this collective mindset where it's like, yes, it can be great for some things, but maybe I don't need to be giving out hundreds of dollars every week to every event that I attend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if if I can't financially, take care of myself. Or the
So what
ones
are
I
you
love.
saying? We should be a little bit more selfish, maybe?
Yeah, no. I guess I just like how does someone break away from that? Because like I still kind of have that mindset where it's like I don't respect money. If I go to an event, I'm just gonna throw some money that maybe I probably should be saving for like you know, for myself for a darker time, you know. But how do we escape that? And I guess like I don't know, and like
I mean, I would say that it's not that you don't respect money. I think you probably respect it too much, right? Like
yeah,
it's like community. So
yeah,
like did your parents do that a lot? Like just help anybody who came and asked?
yeah. For as for what they could,
Yeah.
and so but like you know my father left really early on. We didn't attend a lot of these Hmong events, so I guess maybe that's a fault of mine where I don't know what the expectations are, and so because I don't know, I just give money
But
Yeah.
do you feel
to compensate.
do you feel obligated to give culturally?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there is that.
When you go to the Kite, right?
There
You
is
gotta
that,
you gotta
yeah.
drop.
Nah, you can
You
drop
you
whatever
gotta
you
drop.
want, bro. It goes
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
envelope.
Yeah.
Just
yeah,
don't
yeah.
put your name on it, because once your name on it, they'll
Yeah.
know.
Tip, guys.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
life
yeah, yeah. You
hack.
can only
Life
give
hack,
$5.
guys.
I'm not gonna answer for you, but yeah, no, I understand that
Yeah,
part
yeah,
for sure,
yeah.
and especially if you go to a lot of events. Like some people
Yeah.
go to a lot of events. Yeah, some people go to a lot of events and they do give. And I'll just say, just smart part on it is I think it's awesome to do that, but I think personally you gotta. Maybe it's a more Western individual mindset, but I think you gotta develop and be good yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to suffer at the cost of others, even though you're doing
Yeah.
something good. I would say by donating and helping them out, because
Yeah.
we've had Hmong weddings. I
Yeah.
don't know if you haven't. So we've seen the envelopes come towards us,
Yeah.
and we've seen how good it helps us like
Yeah.
pay off our wedding.
yeah.
So we get that part being communal, but unfortunately, I think in America now we live in a very individualistic culture where if you don't have money, then you're the one that suffers.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say give, but give what you can,
Yeah.
and don't feel obligated.
Yeah.
I think culture.
Yeah.
You're probably getting
'Cause
influenced by the culture.
There is like that cultural component too, and then there's like
100%.
it has translated to my view on money, where it's like
Ah.
I just think collectively it's like where it's like yeah, like if you need something, we're out together. Drinks on me. We're all gonna get something. Like
Yeah.
we all buy for each other, right? If we're at a restaurant, we're like racing to pay the bill. Where maybe we don't.
White people don't do that as much.
Yeah, and
White people don't do that as much.
and where maybe it kind of sets us back or sets us up
Mhm.
poorly. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I guess I feel like time and money, right? Like I kind of see it the same way, right? So
Yeah.
like with time, like or just like even being here and there's so many events, right?
Mhm.
But like for me, like I have my own hustle that I have to do, right? And so
Mhm.
the time that I take away attending somebody else's event, like sometimes I rather just give money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because my time is a little bit more important now.
Mhm.
Like and so I definitely feel like it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Like just you both working in your business. It's like if you go and attend an event,
Yeah.
that takes away stuff that you could be doing for your own
Yeah.
business, right? And so then there's like this balance between of I need to make sure that I'm honoring my commitments to myself
Mhm.
first, which includes money and time,
Yeah.
and then I can give some of that away,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean it's just like the whole thing with the when you're flying, right? And they say like help yourself first before you help someone else,
Mhm.
Right.
right? I think it's very similar to that, of just
Yeah.
like your time and money. It's like if you give so much away, you can't be able to give
Yeah.
more later, and so I when I think about like my own like the stuff that I'm working on and why I need to always still be working on my stuff is that I want to give more later.
Yeah.
I've been able to see that with my parents. Like my dad is like the cheapest person
Yeah.
ever. Like he like growing up, he never put AC in the car.
Dang.
Like he would
Yeah,
never
yeah,
turn.
that's rough.
And this was in North Carolina,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it's humid too
Yeah, it's
and it
hot.
gets hot. But then when there's funerals, when
Yeah.
there's things that like to me it's like like he can be able to give money. And like
Yeah.
I think I saw that of just like
Mm.
wow, like even though like we're cheap on things that sometimes like you feel like oh this is suffering, like we're in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
house and it's hot tech and there's no AC. But then when someone passes away, my dad's able to like give a substantial
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah.
just like and so I think that like that did a couple things to me because I think now when I look back, I'm like, I don't want that same suffering, And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think growing up, I was always like, when I'm an adult, I want to have AC and I want to like
Yeah.
be able to like, wear shorts in the house and not have to just, like just
That's
be very
when you know you
comfortable.
made it. You got AC in the
exactly.
car. Yeah.
Right. Or like have heat, like in the
I can
summer,
turn on my air
right?
conditioner and not think about it.
That's right.
We do got it made, man. We got AC in the car. AC. I had
Yeah.
one of my buddies. One of my buddies just came here from France last week. And France is a very developed nation, but he came here and the first thing he said, like, "Damn, you Americans got AC everywhere." And I'm like, yeah, I guess in France y'all don't use. I mean, you have it, but you don't. You like in America, we're spoiled in that sense where we use it all the time.
Yeah.
The malls got AC. The
Yes.
stores got. Like, if there's no AC, we complain. Like,
Instant
why is it so hot in
gratification,
here?
right?
Yeah.
Like we need
We
stuff
are spoiled.
right now.
Yeah.
right? Like
We are spoiled.
but I definitely feel like it's not that it holds us back. I think just like really balancing the two, right?
Yeah.
Moderation, because it's not like
I agree.
if I don't give like $100 now, doesn't mean I'm not going to give like for someone, if I can't give to my cousin, doesn't mean that I'm not going to give to my niece when they have, when I have nieces,
Yeah.
right? Let's just like, it's not forever that I'm delaying, being able to help people, but I need to help myself. Like, I think for me, like I have certain things in my head of like my goals and stuff, and I've also been fortunate to have friends who like have gotten to a really good place and are able to help other people. And I see that, right? And I know like, okay, this is where I can help right now. But if I can get to this next point in my life, I can do even more. And I want to get to that level where I can do a lot more. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of in a way, you're kind of saying, just to reiterate, you're kind of saying just kind of work hard on yourself so that you can be in a place to give back. As opposed to just constantly giving and then you're the one that hurts at home privately.
Right. And like if you don't want to work, like, so I love work. I love to work. I love building stuff. I love creating things. I love helping people. Like I love what I do for work. And so all those things I feel like makes it very easy for me to be like, okay, well, I know I'm going to get to a certain point. So I'll be able to do more, if you don't want to work, if that doesn't sound like that's what you want your life to be like, then you do have to be moderate about that, right? Because things do come up. Like, you could get sick, your kids could get sick, your parents could get sick, and you want to be able to help your family.
Yes.
Too,
so I want to ask the question from the opposite side, because I understand I just met you, but I understand that you're a driven person. So how, as you've evolved as a human being, how have you found where have you balanced your life, right?
Yeah.
Because driven people tend to, you go, and you say, eventually I'm going to have this grand thing that's going to be able to give back to everybody. And I have really good friends that sometimes will tell me, yeah, but bro, you got to live now, because what if when you have all that at the end of the day, you didn't do nothing on the way there, you're still going to regret that you didn't utilize your time on the way there.
Yeah.
So, and I think we all come to that realization when we hit like our mid-30s or so, which I believe you're right around that same age as us. So are you starting to balance it out more, or are you still like completely go, or wherever you found that balance, right? Because I like to talk about that, because I think it's an important component. Otherwise, you can drive yourself completely nuts, and you might still get to a goal. But if you get to the goal with no friends, or you didn't do anything enriching in on the path,
if our kids hate
then
us,
are you really happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If your kids hate us, things like that. So how you found the balance to be this driven individual to get after your financial goals, but also say, hey man, you gotta sometimes tone down, and like, have you found that balance? Are you good at it?
I think so. I mean, like I do work like so. Usually like when I think about my days, I do think, like if I'm gonna grab coffee with Shane, this is gonna
Shout
take
out
this
to her.
much time.
Yeah.
This is gonna take this much time. So that means I need to find other time in my day to work hard. And so like I don't have my kids all the time, and so I hustle a lot when they're not there, right? Like I feel like I am constantly like working all the time. So that when they're there, I'm not working as
all the time.
hard. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. Like, I don't want to get to like a place in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have like all these things, but I have like no one.
Right.
So, I definitely feel like where you put your time, just like where you put your money, is like what you value the most, right? And so I would say sometimes I still need a reminder of that, because I think left to my own devices, I just will work all the
some
time.
People are built like machines. Like we're just vehicles towards a goal. Which I always am so inspired by those people, but at the same time, I've met enough of them that are successful that I have a lot of things outside than financial gains that I don't necessarily like like about them, right?
Right.
Like they're
Right.
they're not balanced well.
Mhm.
And so whenever I meet people that are driven,
Yeah.
I'm always very curious, like, how do you balance it out?
Yeah.
And I like that to talk about it because I think people need to hear that it's not just
It's not just go,
it's
go,
not
go,
just
go.
go, go,
Yeah.
because then you lose other parts of your life. And if you
Yeah.
don't have those friends in your life, like I'm very lucky I have friends that remind me, like, dude,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
cool, your business is gonna get huge, and then what? So I love that I have friends like that, but maybe some
Yeah.
people don't have that. And so
Yeah.
I like to always
Yeah.
talk about it because it's like success has many different definition. And so when
Yeah.
I get somebody in front of me like yourself, who's a very driven CFO, you know,
Yeah.
understand finance, all those things, like what I want to talk about is, okay, how do you balance yourself out to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
success financially, but also find success in your personal life, you know?
Yeah.
So
Because I would say I'm like right there where I'm starting. I have an opportunity to potentially grow my business, but then also like
well, you have
I'm
two
still
young
super
daughters.
busy. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a full time job. I'm growing my business. I'm married, and then I have 2 young daughters.
Yeah.
So then my intention in doing all this was so that I can buy more time with my
Yeah.
children, essentially. But then as I'm doing this, I'm realize why not
Right.
just
We talked about that
slow
earlier.
down and
Mhm.
spend the time with my children now. But it
Yeah, what do
does
you find there, right?
it does hurt the business a little bit, but or do I just grind at my business and at the expense of not spending time with my wife and children? And so it's like having you here is really interesting just because like Tu said, like I'm at that very like pivotal moment where I'm like, all right, do I continue to grow this or do I and is it bad that I'm not willing to sacrifice this?
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
You
let
know,
me
because-
ask you, as
yeah.
as a personal accountant, what's one way that we can help ourselves to maybe set ourselves up for the future a little bit, but at the
Mhm.
same time enjoy our time now, right? Like what financial plays are fairly smart or have been proven that you can do as a person to set money aside, or
Yeah.
like different vehicles that can maybe get you money later on, like
Yeah.
like maybe 401ks or Roths or
Yeah.
assets. Like what are some
Yeah.
things that people
Yeah.
can do as individuals to still find a little bit of time but
Yeah.
secure a little bit in the bag
Yeah.
for our future?
Yeah. I would say budget. Like I
Okay.
think not like everybody actually looks at how much they spend and like
Okay.
if they're living below their means or not, because you can have all those things, right? Like you
Yeah.
have more time, but you always sacrifice something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I definitely feel like if you want more time, then you have to accept that I'm going to slow down in my business and that I'm okay with that. Because once you're okay with that, then everything else is easy, right? It's
Yeah.
a no-brainer. But you can't look back in 5 years and be
Yeah.
like, gosh, I'm killing it. And I could probably even offer my kids more. Like, so I think with the thing with, like, and I definitely don't have it like figured out.
Yeah.
But I also know I'm at like the building stage of my life. It
Mhm.
felt like when I was building my career, that was a building, but I feel like this is like a new building of something that I'm trying
Yeah.
to do. Right. And so I feel like a big part of it is like bringing my kids along with me.
Yeah.
Letting them see what I do, like they're 7 and 9 right now, and so I definitely feel like they're entering the stage where they could probably help me with certain things. I mean, not like actual accounting, but they
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
do flyers. They could probably put stickers on. Like
Yeah.
you have chopsticks and stuff like
Yeah.
right. They can probably do. There's things that they could do that builds that relationship with you. That
Mhm.
I feel like I think as an entrepreneur, like I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody feels that way. Maybe your daughter's gonna grow up, just like everybody who owns a restaurant, right? Like
Yeah.
they grow up and they're like, I hate it working at my parents' restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like your parents' restaurant allow you certain privileges. So
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I always feel like, with your kids, you're always gonna fail them in some ways, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna
Yeah.
grow up and think like, my daddy didn't give me AC.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
daddy pushed me
Yeah.
too hard. My daddy like believed in me too
I-
much. But when I look back at that, I'm like, wow, my parents, like that's what they gave me. Like
Yeah.
it's just like this like attitude of can do, and
Mhm.
sometimes I spite them for that, right? Because I'm like, gosh, you guys like always push me to do all these things because
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
believe in me, and so I feel like in some ways, like with your kids, it's just like you're always gonna fail them. They're
Yeah.
always gonna look and say, well, you didn't do this or you didn't
Yeah.
do that, right? If
I
you're
fully have accepted that
Yeah.
at one point they're gonna hate me, and that's
Right.
okay.
But I would definitely say budget. I feel
Okay.
like
Yeah, budget.
not enough people know like how much.
And so
don't
like
keep up
what do
with the
we
Jones.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
okay.
Oh yes.
Let's talk about that
because
as well.
That's
because I
huge.
think that's what makes it's just like you see people go on trips and you're like, you know what? Let's like rack up some debt and go on trips.
Yeah, social
If you
media
can
is a
afford
big
that. Yes, yeah.
social media, and I would say Hmong culture has a lot of influence within each other. We might not, maybe you don't look at like Michael Jordan and stuff like that, but maybe you look at Uncle B over here or Uncle Yang over here, got that big ass house and he's fucking golfing every time. And it can creep. It definitely can creep. Like you say, when you say keeping up with the Joneses is looking at somebody else and then getting influenced like subconsciously about, oh, I got to keep up with them. And a lot of us will say we don't, but then I look at what you drive. Like that's for me, I work around cars. So my simple marker is when I see somebody come in and I look at what you drive. And I'm a very practical person in a sense where like my cars are other than this one, both my cars are sub 10K, okay? And that's the way I look at it. Very practical. I have enough friends in the industry, but I can tell a lot by like choices that people make just based on their cars, or a lot of times by what you wear. I can tell a lot by like what you wear. I can't see what you have in the bank, but I can tell what you're telling the world by what you're wearing. And so that's a piece of keeping up with the Joneses, which is I look at social media. What's Chris Brown rocking? Dang, I want those Jordans too. Do you need them? Not necessarily. Do they make you feel better? Yeah, probably. I wouldn't say that it doesn't make you feel better. But are you rocking them because you love that shoe and its design and its color? Or are you rocking it because the guy next to you is rocking it and you perceive him to be here, and so you need to be there as well? So I think that's keeping up with the Joneses, if I'm correct. It's keeping up with other people around you.
And it's very subtle. Or sometimes you feel like you see somebody do something, you're like, I deserve that. But do you?
Yeah.
You know, do you actually deserve that?
Maybe you do, but are you in a place? You do, but are you in a place to do it? You know? Because when I see my family go on a trip, like when I see other people among people just doing they go into like the millionaire the galas and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I want to be there. Let me get a suit and go to the millionaire gala and feel like I'm the Hmong rich guy too. But then it's like, it's cool if I'm not there either. Like if you go there and it fulfills you, great. But like, I don't think you should feel as though like, oh, I'm not there like them. And now you start comparing, and then you say, well, he's got a Tundra and they got a nice house in Cottage Grove. And okay, we can't really afford that house, but I mean, we can, the bank allows me to, but it's draining 80% of what I earn. And so like, I think like, I feel like in the Hmong community, just my perspective, I feel like in the Hmong community, there is a lot of like, look at my uncle's got the nice car. And so as a culture too, I feel like it is. So I like that you talk about just not having to try to keep up with the Joneses because it hurts yourself more.
Yeah, and just being realistic, because I think again, it's just like, you don't know how, like how hard somebody works. I work a lot, like, so it's just like sometimes it's just like if you're, like, comparing yourselves to me in terms of, like I've also worked for a long time, and so it's just like, even if we're the same age, like you have to recognize like, like even skill set, right? Like you doing your B's, it's just like somebody coming in, they're not going to watch a TikTok video for 6 seconds and be like, what, I'm going to have a B, like like, it's just like, there's a lot of things I've learned to get me to this point, and just like everybody else, like it's like, they work hard in whatever it is that they do. And so you can't measure yourself against somebody else and then also feel like, like I deserve that too. Like so if you deserve everything all the time, you're gonna be in a bad spot.
So maybe instead of keeping up with the Joneses of like buying things and having nice things, maybe we should try to keep up with each other's work.
Well, I think we should keep honest with ourselves more than anything, right? More than anything. If you make 60 grand, I love it. There's this saying that I love that it's just not how much you make, it's what you keep. Because it's true. Because if you make 50K a year, which if we are talking salaries, some people would say 50K, hey, nothing. You want to make 120K. Okay, but what if the guy making 50K lives very
super frugal?
What's the word? Yeah, he's very frugal. And we both get to the age of 40, right? We started at 20, 40. One guy's got 150K annually. The other guys only have 50K since the age of 20, and then maybe a little bit bump for inflation every year. But he's been putting his money away. When we both get to 40, the guy who's got 150K, 2 Porsches, a big house, goes to the golf course, has a yacht, he might only have 100K in the bank. But the guy who's been making 50K, who's had the philosophy of it's what I keep, not what I make, maybe he's got like
But 2, he drives a Porsche.
And that's that's keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And like, I think at the end of the day, like just not comparing yourself.
That's
really,
true too.
Right?
Very
Because
important.
it's just like,
Yeah.
like if you've had like a hard family life or if you've gone through a lot of things that puts, it's again, like you look at somebody who's the same age as you and you think, dang, like I should have made so many much better decisions. But like you have to realize like all the things you went through, like build you to be who you are, and there's always like all of us, I feel like all of us have strengths in like what we do and like understanding that and like never saying, I wish I'd done this or that or the other. Like we're always going to have those. Right. And so I think just, like if you start where you are today, and make better decisions, and
that's
so,
huge.
just remembering that and like, just because somebody else can do a lot more doesn't, like tomorrow things can all go down.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right? So it's just like you can get cancer tomorrow. You know, like and I think that's the whole balance thing too that we talked earlier. It's just like I think with my, like with my dad being like super frugal, like thank goodness like my whole family's healthy right now.
Yeah.
Right. But like if something would happen, like it would suck to go, without AC for a year and then like you get cancer.
Yeah.
Like dang,
Well,
you should
I-
just gotten AC.
Yeah, I always-
maybe I should have just splurged.
balance, right? So
Yeah.
I think just finding that balance.
That is
of,
the
like,
balance. That is the balance because I have a friend who always tells me, "What if you die tomorrow?"
Yeah.
And so it's not the YOLO, but you gotta respect YOLO too.
Yes.
You have to respect YOLO too because you could be in a car accident tomorrow, and then let's say you lose both limbs, and now you can't do what you're supposed to do. So, but finding the balance, I think, is the hardest part, and it's influenced by keeping up with the Joneses a lot because you're like, I want to do this and do that, and maybe it's not the time for you to do it. But then, how do you tell yourself, well, I should still do something? So life as a whole, I will say, is very hard, but finances are so tied into it, and so having someone like you that can talk about that, the two things you mentioned, budgeting, and then not keeping up with the Joneses. I just want to ask you, when it comes to budgeting, how do you do your budgeting? And don't go into the deep weeds. We don't got to know the deep weeds, but do you use an app? Do you use an Excel spreadsheet? Like, how do you kind of do it? Okay.
Excel,
Okay.
I'm kind of old, like I'm still very like traditional in terms of like very paper manual, but also Excel. And so I would say Excel.
But so that's a great thing to talk about for the people that are listening. Like maybe start a document, whether it be an Excel or Microsoft Docs or even write on a piece of paper or use phone apps. There's so many phone apps now that help you see your numbers because if you see them all the time, if you look at them every day, you start to see like, oh crap, I spent a lot of money. Like subscription. How many subscriptions do you have that are like Netflix or like Disney and stuff like that? Multiple?
Probably multiple.
And
do you count all the OnlyFans account? No, I'm just kidding. kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Probably too many.
But it's that's like a new thing in the 2020s that creeps on all of us, I think.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you buy Netflix and then your partner already has it and you didn't even know that they had Netflix and you just bought
one
Netflix.
maybe communicate better.
And that's
for
like,
sure.
But like subscription. So like when I first started in public accounting, and I was auditing, just like technology companies. And so they would have a lot of their contracts were like perpetual, like they pay a fee and then that was it, right? And so then it was just like, okay, how do we make more money? Well, we go to subscription model, we make more money, right? It's recurring every month. And so on the business side of things, just looks like, they're also trying to figure out how to make more money out of people.
Right, of course.
And so, you have to, kind of figure that out. But
which all comes back down to personal finance. You have to be conscious about your stuff. And subscriptions, I talk about those because I feel like those creep on all of us.
Yeah.
All of us. We're like, oh, there's a show I really want to watch, and it's on Amazon Prime.
Right.
So you get it, and then that show's over, and then that subscription continues rolling. And if you're not conscious, like you said, with a spreadsheet or something, then you like don't even know it's happening.
Right.
And then it's like it's a collective $20 this month, $20 next month, and then you look at over. Let's say you've had it for 5 years. Then you look at that and what if I took all that money and I threw in a Roth IRA?
Right.
It would have been growing at 6 to 8% or whatever versus going into Amazon Prime, which I don't even watch because I use Netflix primarily.
Right.
So
but if it does, if it adds, like value to your life, then I say like it's definitely okay. But it's like like you can't have everything too, right?
Yeah.
Well, I like that you say that if it brings value to your life because it's you have to spend
right
to have a quality of life
Right.
that
Like
you
if you,
enjoy as
yeah,
well.
like if getting a cup of coffee for you, like just it makes your day. Then
Yeah.
get your cup of coffee,
Yeah.
you know. But you can't get your cup of coffee and get the croissant and get,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
like
Or maybe
Yeah.
don't do it twice
Yeah.
a day, right?
right.
Don't do it twice a day.
Exactly,
Maybe just once a
Yeah.
exactly.
day.
Just make it special.
once every
you
other
know
day.
What I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
discipline as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So budgeting, a little discipline, and then not being too influenced by the people
Yeah.
around you
Yeah.
because we're all in a different path.
Right. And
Right.
like, you know, like even 401ks, like you don't have to max it. You know, if all you can do is 1%, do 1%. Like it's kind of like if you're studying, you know, like if you're going to school, like if all you can do is studying like 30 minutes a day, just do 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Like, because like those are like the consistency piece is what's going to add value later.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
It's
so,
the habit building.
yeah. So instead of just being like, you know what, I can't max out my 401k, so I'm not going
Yeah.
to contribute anything. Like, it's
But should we put some into the 401k?
Yeah.
If it's a piece of
So,
advice.
everyone, you know, like people who are like very aggressive are gonna say you can probably make more money elsewhere.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
personally feel like I like diversification.
Yep.
So I like putting stuff, you know, like having your own stocks, you know, putting some of your 401k, especially if like you have an employer match or something, like that's something to consider. And so I personally just feel like diversifying.
Okay,
you
and
know?
so when
but
you
I'm not like I would say I'm not like a expert who's gonna be like,
Yeah.
this is what
Okay.
you should put your money.
So when we
in.
say just the diversification, like what are some different vehicles that one can utilize as they're growing
Yeah.
through their
Yeah.
through life?
Yeah.
What are some different vehicles that people have
Yeah.
that might be available for them to start building a decent nest egg for
Yeah.
themselves in the future?
Because that's huge. Because I do hear the word diversify a lot, but like
Yeah,
me
like,
not
what
being
does
like,
it mean?
yeah,
right?
what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
what am I putting my money
Yeah,
in?
where do I
Yeah.
diversify?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, I contribute to my 401k, but when people say, hey, you should be moving money around, I'm just like, where
Right,
else
right.
do it?
Yeah.
Like, and how do I go about
Yeah.
doing it? And where, if I want to know the information, where can I find the information?
Yeah. So those are a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, sorry.
So there's like when I think about diversification, like it could be based on like your 401k too,
Yeah.
right? Like having diversify like funds within your 401k. But then stepping back, like
Wait,
you know,
so inside your 401k,
you can pick different funds, right? So like
Really?
for like
Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
so for me, like I just put into a retirement fund that's like I'm gonna retire at this, and then as you get like older, like it becomes more conservative automatically, you know, because you can pick and choose and all that stuff too.
Okay.
Like I personally don't, just because I don't have time to really do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? And then like if you get stocks, like, you know, you can pick your own, or you can put it into like, you know, like more mutual funds where there's lots of different stocks within it.
Okay.
But like stepping back from that, like, you know, because you can do real estate, you can do stocks, you can do your 401k, you can do a Roth. Like, so I think putting money, like for me, I think putting money, like that's what I'm trying to build, is just like having money in different avenues too, you know. And then I do have life insurance as well, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
And so I like, those are things that I just consider because I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I want them to be set up too, should something
Yeah.
happen to me, right? And
Yeah.
so just really thinking about, you know, what are the different ways I can just protect myself and my family
Yeah.
should something happen, right? And then
Right.
like, I mean, you know, even having like short-term, long-term disability
Yeah.
insurance, those are all things that, you know,
Okay.
you just want to protect yourself. you
Yeah.
know?
So having many different ways where money can come from,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
because I think if you have
exactly.
it all in one place, what if that crashes?
Right,
Correct.
right,
So-
Right.
right.
So I think that
Yeah.
and that's an important thing to talk about. I think I like that you
Yeah.
say that. Put it in multiple places, which does require a little bit more of like attentiveness because there's a
Mhm.
lot more
Right,
pieces
right,
to the puzzle.
right.
Yeah.
Which not everybody loves.
Right.
So unfortunately, you kind of
Right.
got to get past that wall of
Right.
having to monitor multiple things.
Yeah.
But I think that is, and that's what I hear a lot too. Diversify a little bit, because if you put it all in one place, then if it collapses, then
Yeah.
let's say all your money is like in the stock market, and then we have like an '08 collapse where you drop for 40% of all your what you have.
Yeah.
It might not affect you depending on where you are. You know, if you're
Yeah.
30, well then it might come back. But if you're 62,
Right.
and you're just
Like,
about to hit
right.
retirement, then you're
Yes.
like, shit, I just lost 40% of my
Right.
funds. So,
Yeah.
so I like that you say that diversification, put it in different
Because some
places.
things, right? Like it's not like you have to think liquidity of like funds too, right? Like of just how fast you can get the money,
Right,
because
right,
sometimes like if you have,
Might
if you
need
have
it.
like real estate, like you have to sell the house or you have to take a line of credit,
Right.
that might be, I don't know, 30 days, 45 days. But what
Mhm.
if you needed the money, like,
Right.
I don't know, like
Like now.
tomorrow,
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just
Yeah.
like having some of, because like to me, it's just like it's okay to have some money sitting in
Yeah.
like a
So
cash
it's-
account too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like not everything has to be earning like a ton of. That's just how
Right.
that's how I
right.
see
right.
things
Right.
because in case somebody needs it,
Yeah.
I think it's nice to have it.
And so here we're talking about maybe somebody. And when I hear this, I imagine somebody with money to play around with.
Mhm.
What about
Yeah.
somebody who, or folks that will with not a lot of money to maybe potentially save or play
Yeah.
around with?
Yeah.
If there is one, where would that one go to?
Ooh,
Like,
that's
like if you can only have one saving account or like one,
yeah.
because like maybe you don't have a lot of money to play around with. Like, where would you
So
have them
a
invest
a
or put them
strategy
in?
for
Yeah.
okay.
I would say just even building an emergency fund.
Okay.
Like if you don't have like 6 months emergency funds, you should just build that.
And so when we say emergency funds, can
Like
you
just,
elaborate?
savings.
Okay, just savings.
Right? Because like if your car dies, like if someone's in the hospital, if you lose your job, like being able to live on 6
Okay.
months of
Okay.
your expenses.
Okay, so we're just saying have a little bit of money to the side in case something bad goes down. For example, lose a job.
Yeah.
We don't have to panic.
Right. And then
Exactly.
go and take out a payday loan or,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
all these because
Right.
I feel like we do make bad decisions when we're in a bind.
In stressful
right? And so,
situation, yeah.
so it's just like, if you don't have money, again, like lower, like how much you're spending
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then saving that money and just having an emergency fund, so that
Yeah.
you're not, because nobody ever makes good decisions when
Yeah.
they're
When you're
out.
stressed, yeah.
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 You're just
Which
trying
tends
to
to like it seems like it always compounds too. Just like how interest
Yes.
compounds on the way up,
Yes.
bad situations compound on the way down
Yeah,
too. So
yeah.
it's like I'm stressed, I pull out a
Yes.
payday loan, which
Right.
is I don't even know what the percentage is on that. So
Right.
Yeah.
okay, I needed $5,000 to pay for this, but now that came at 30%. So now
Yeah.
30% of the 5,000 I just
Yeah.
borrowed,
Yeah.
and now that piles up, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we
Yeah.
bankrupt, now we
Yeah.
now
Right.
now we
Everything goes
bail,
up.
now we
Yeah.
leave, now
Yeah.
we
So
yes.
I would say like, just make more money.
Yeah,
Ask
that's
for a
true.
raise.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Ask for a raise.
That's a
make
good one.
more
Yeah.
money.
Ask for a
know your
raise.
worth. And when I say know your worth, I think we throw that around a lot, right? Like I
Yeah.
deserve 6 figures when I just started working.
Mhm.
You might not.
Yeah.
And so, but like know what you're bringing to the table. Like if you
Mhm.
need to move jobs, if you need to talk to your boss and say, I like to see what my career growth plan is, and like I actually did that with when I was in public accounting. So I like the year before I was going to make manager, I did tell my partner that like next year, this is what I like, this is where I want to be and this is how much I want to make. Like,
Mhm.
can we make that possible? And so we had that conversation prior to that, like and before, so that I didn't get to that point and was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get promoted and I didn't get, to the amount that I wanted, and so, so that was, just kind of, something that I think you need to do too is just
Yeah.
to ask, and then I remember when and I've written about this like on my page too. So I had like before, I think it was like before my um daughter was born, I was gonna go back to work because I'd stayed home. I was gonna be a stay-at-home mom, and then I hated it. And so then I like applied for a job. I was already like, I don't know, 6 months pregnant. And so then we talked about the salary, and then I'd said like, I want 95,000, and he was just like, okay, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like
So
okay,
just like you said, ask for what you
Yes.
want, because I've always it's like that saying that no question is a stupid question. Asking is not a bad thing either.
Yeah.
Like the person, like you're not gonna offend them, I think, as much as you think you are.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
if they are a very self-conscious person as well, they're very well aware they can just say no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
Exactly.
they're an employer. They're not. It's not, you're not going to your friend asking him for money. You're asking an
Right.
employer. They're
Yeah, yeah.
hiring you
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
tool for
Yeah.
their business to grow. So you have every
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
to ask, and nothing like I
Yeah.
guarantee you, if you ask, nothing's gonna happen.
And so
they're not
like
gonna hit you or nothing.
so with that, like he said okay, and then I was like okay, and then
So then
when I
did you
had
say
my-
105?
I did. Yeah.
Oh,
Wait, did you
nice.
read this?
No. I just
Okay.
assumed that you figured out, oh shit, I can ask for it more.
Right, because
Yeah.
it was just so fast, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're negotiating and someone's like, okay, like
Yeah.
you know, you kind of
Yeah. You
Like-
almost feel
Yeah.
bad, like dang, I
Should've
should have
asked for
started
more.
at I
Yeah,
should have
yeah,
started at 140.
because you always want them
Yeah.
to counter and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I definitely feel like you do like know where your skill sets are and
Mhm.
ask the appropriate amount,
Yeah.
right? But like it's okay to like ask for a little bit more because like you said, they can always say no, but if you don't ask, the answer is always gonna
Right.
be
Yeah.
no, right?
And they're not necessarily
so-
offended. Like, sure, some
Right.
might be, but business is a black and white type
Mhm.
transaction.
Right.
So yeah, you should ask for
Yeah.
what you
Right.
think you're worth, and sometimes
Right.
you might shoot more than what you're really worth.
Right.
But maybe that company has more value in you, and so
Right.
they'll
Yeah.
pay you more, even
Right.
though market says I shouldn't be making that much.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Yeah,
just
yeah.
ask, ask.
Yeah.
I do have a question. You had
Mhm.
mentioned that you and your finances was something that you and your partner at the time was discussing. How much should finances be discussed in the home, like, and how much between you and your relation,
Yeah.
like partners in relationship?
Yeah.
Because I've heard different takes on this, and
Yeah.
I just would like to hear
Yeah.
like
A lot. So
your
he had an
perspective.
accounting background as well.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're both like very numbers people.
Okay.
So we talked about it a lot, which I think you should.
Yeah.
Like I think you should know, like, like where you plan to go, like where and like I
Right.
think I just naturally I think as a partner I just naturally push
Yeah.
the other person, and then I think because of my own goals, like you can be wherever, like my partner could be. It doesn't matter, like if you're winning or losing, like I'm gonna be winning. So like
Yeah.
you can come along for the ride and like
Yeah.
support me, or you can also continue to progress. Like I guess like when I think about my own goals and stuff, like I don't need a partner to like measure up to me, because I know
Mm.
sometimes I can get a little psychotic with like
Yeah.
where I want to go, right? Because I see it in my head
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
where I want to go. Again, like it's like if you want to come along for the ride,
Yeah.
or if you want to continue to better yourself. Like I think that's always nice to have a partner who like inspires you, because like, and I don't want to be the person that always inspires the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that I have been or that I do, but I just feel like you should talk about those things, and you should know
Mhm.
like what kind of cars do we want to eventually give our kids, right? What kind of like assets, like when they get married, do we want to give our
Mhm.
kids, right? What kind of vacations do we want to take as a family? Because that all comes with a price that we have to pay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can't want all these things and want to set my kids up for success and then be like, but I'm gonna just, creep at my job. Right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna
Yeah.
like stay at this level. Like
Just
that comes
cruise.
with, unless you say, we're not gonna do all those things, right? They're gonna take out student loans when they go to school.
Yeah.
So that means that, in some ways maybe we don't work as hard and we get to spend time with them. But
Yeah.
it's just like
Mhm.
a sacrifice that you make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I always go back and I don't have kids, but I always go back and forth too. Like even if I like the day that I have kids, it's like, do I pay for their college? It's the nice thing to do, but not saying that you got to pull yourself by the bootstraps too, because I hate that. Like you should help the family
Yeah.
below. But I think as first generations that we built it ourselves, I think there's a certain tenacity that came behind that,
Yeah.
and like a certain grit that we all had to like learn
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah.
So is
I'm
that
not
some-
gonna pay. for
Yeah,
my
okay,
kids'
yeah.
College.
Yeah.
Are you paying for your kids' college? I mean,
Yeah,
I, think,
no,
I don't
no,
have kids. I don't have
I'm
kids.
not
Yeah,
going to, okay,
yeah, yeah.
because
I
you
don't
know
know
what?
if what I
Yeah.
would do.
This
I'm
is
not
what-
sure what I
okay,
would do.
So this is how I feel. Like
Yeah.
when it's not your money, you don't really care.
That's-
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like
It's
when
different.
if
It's
my parents
different.
are gonna pay for my college, I'm
Yeah.
probably not gonna try as hard. But if I'm paying for my college, my ass is gonna be working hard,
Yeah,
yeah.
right? And so
It's true.
I feel like that's and hopefully my kids don't listen to this, but
Yeah.
I will pay off their student
Yeah,
loans.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
my intention. But I
Right.
would like to for them to take out the loans without them
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
that I'm
yeah.
gonna pay for their
Yes.
college,
Yeah.
right? Because I just feel like I want them to hustle and I want them to like not feel like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
My mom and dad can do it, so I'm just gonna
Just understand
you
that
know.
things are not given.
Yes,
Yeah, I
They're
think
not
that's very
given.
true.
Exactly.
They're not
Yeah,
given.
because there's a certain way to go
But
about.
I wouldn't.
Like,
I don't
about
fault
it.
if you pay for your kids. I'm
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
I'm gonna
Right,
be. I'm
we're not
gonna,
No, no.
look
I'm gonna be
down.
proud of you. I'm gonna be like, damn, good job, dude.
Yeah.
You did something awesome for your kids. Like I'm
Yeah.
proud of you for that.
Yeah.
But I guess
I just feel like now, like as a parent now, like
well, you're
that
still in
is
debt, so
somewhat-
you're like, yeah, I don't
yeah,
want my
that-
kids to be
yeah.
in debt. Yeah,
Like,
I get that.
our role, I don't know, and it's our role as parents is to provide knowledge and to kind of set them up better than maybe potentially we were set up. I just, freaking LeBron James just got his kid drafted to the NBA, right? Nepotism is real. And I think that's how all these people have gotten ahead for thousands of years. And it's like, it'll be wrong for us to not set up our kids to do well. And that can be done in many different ways, right? It could be done financially. It could be done just through teaching them good morals and skills and teaching them to value their own ability, right? So I would hope that I'm in a position that I can do it, and I do plan to.
Right.
I just ask. I just ask the question because it's a thought. It's a recurring thought in my head, because a lot of the grit that I've come to have now is through my own trial and tribulations and hard times.
Yeah.
And so I always think, like, if you give too much, and that's the balance, I think, for most probably first generation Hmong people that are like doing better.
Yeah.
I think we all have that question. Like, we grind hard because we saw our parents not do as well, and that's why we grind hard.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure we all think about it in our heads. Like, if I give my kid everything, will they have the same tenacity to tackle life the same way we did? Or maybe we're just not giving our kids enough credit.
Yeah.
Maybe the kids will be just fine.
No, that's definitely true, because because I watch my parents work really hard. And I appreciate them for all of that. And I feel like sometimes now my kids, I would hope they see me working hard. It's a different kind of working hard, right? It's not labor working hard. It's not like my dad's getting up at 6 a.m. and he's gone already type of hard. But, I definitely hope that my kids, I think that's where I also want to incorporate my kids into the work that
just
I
to
do.
show them.
I want them to see
to feel it.
The value of $1, and then, also this is what we're doing for people, right? Like, this is the kind of service that we want to give to people, and the kind of people that you're going to meet. I mean, there's just so many social things too that I feel like I didn't learn a lot of social skills growing up. That's something that I was very deficit in. That I just feel like I had to learn how to talk to people. I had to learn what kind of conversations people talk about, because when I think about my Miga counterparts, when, I got out of, and went to public accounting, it's just like you said, they're used to talking to, potential clients. They're used to talking to, because they're talking to their parents' friends who have businesses, right? They have all these, they know the art of socializing and networking, right? Whereas for us, it's just that was something
we all learned it on the go.
Exactly.
We all learned it on the go, unless we were lucky and some of our parents came real early and they kind of took onto the culture real fast. So it's all dependent on what our parents were like. But I don't know. Maybe I think we just don't give the kids enough credit. I think they'll still figure it out.
No, that's true.
Yeah, they'll still figure it out. I asked one of my friends is a therapist. I asked him hey, I asked him this question, this topic, and he said at the end of the day, it's what values you build inside of them and what do you show them. And so more importantly than just okay, you have a nice car, you have those things the kids see it, but I think they're conscious enough that, like I say, we just don't give them enough credit that if we just instill values constantly, this is what you should see, how you should see the world, that at the end of the day, they're still going to be probably as hopefully as humble as you are. Maybe not.
But I would say this too, man. Sorry, you guys hit a sensitive spot for me. But I've grown up around a lot of different people, and I would say I've seen a lot of spoiled kids. I've seen a lot of kids who come from my background, and man, one thing I don't see in spoiled kids is they never question their place in this world. You know what I mean? There is no need to fake the funk. What is that? What is that thing that it's there's a lot of us where we're talking about imposter syndrome. I never seen a spoiled kid deal with imposter syndrome. They go into these meetings and they're like, this is mine. I own this, and they own their place in these places. And I would rather my kid be a little spoiled and feel and know their value and know what they bring into the world. Right. And take control of their space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
I love that. I have never really thought about it like that, but I really like that. That you're absolutely right, because so many of us who aren't spoiled always feel like we're not good enough, we're not deserving, we're not all these things. But you're absolutely right. A spoiled child, they demand.
They go into it and they control the room, and they never question their place in the world,
Yeah,
you know. And
that's
so
true.
that's just from what I've seen and what I've observed. And you know, I've had the luxury to grow up really poor, and then also be, you know, to go to like a private college and like
Yeah.
hang out with these kids that, you know, whose parents have
Right.
who come from really well off families.
Right.
So then like I see how they interact with people, and I see how I interact with people, with some of
Yeah.
my peers that I grew up with, and it's very different. And I now as a parent now I get to make that decision where I go, okay, these are some of the trade-offs. And I understand it's
Right.
not that like black and white, not that
Yeah.
easy. You know, you can definitely achieve that without spoiling your kids.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
That's so true. Did
Yeah,
you hear
sorry.
what he said? It was so good.
You were saying that if you're like, no, tell me, quick recap.
Okay, so basically, rich kids, spoiled kids, as much as we hate them,
Carry a
they
different
ne-
attitude when
Yeah.
they step into a room.
Yep, they
Yeah, I
never
agree.
question their place in this
Yeah, I
world.
agree because
And
that's
I-
a
yeah.
confidence piece, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yes.
confidence in a capitalist society is like everything.
Yes, because that means right. Like that means you talk yourself up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
like I think that
Is
is
everything.
that is so
Yeah.
true. I feel like I am not always the best at like bragging. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like I always like sometimes like take it down a notch because I
Yeah.
don't want to seem because like in
Humility,
the Hmong culture,
humility,
right?
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
humility,
Like it's
yeah.
always like but like it's totally
But
right.
now
like
then
in,
we end
in
up
Mi'kmaq
underselling
world,
ourselves.
right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you have to like
If
have
you
to
oversell
advocate for
yourself, sometimes you'll work up, right? You
Yeah,
work
yeah.
up to what you sell.
Right.
Ping and I were talking before this podcast. It's like if you take $1 million loan to go run something, the fear of bankrupting is going to make you work so hard that that's how
Yeah.
you get there quickly.
Yes.
Versus like if you're pretty cautious, then
Yeah. That's also not financial advice. So
Yeah,
don't,
it's not financial advice.
don't go take $1 million loan. Don't back yourself in the corner.
That's,
Just it. Yeah,
that's up to you to figure out your own. Look up your own. Look
Yeah.
up and ask yourself what is your own risk tolerance. But
Yeah.
it's true that like having that confidence instilled early on. Yeah, you might be a little bit be seemingly bratty and all those things, but it's true that it seems like that character does tend to like not always, but sometimes benefits those kids. And I think
Yeah.
Hmong kids we tend to have a lot of humility. We're always taught to have
Yes.
humility,
Mhm.
and so we're a little bit we flex a little less because we're afraid of how we're going to be judged. But sometimes flexing a little bit can have its own set of advantages too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
very key point.
Yeah,
there.
sorry.
Because
Yeah.
like you're right in the Hmong culture, it's always like so like what is it like so.
Don't be very braggy.
Yeah,
Yeah, just don't be braggy,
I
yeah.
forget what the phrase is.
Yeah. And so I feel like, but it is good to, it's,
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
to remind ourselves, like we
So
have
you
to,
should be a little bit.
especially when people don't know us, right? You
Yeah.
walk into a place where people don't know, like if it's someone that knows you, you don't have to say a lot, right?
Yeah.
But if you're having to sell yourself, you should,
Well,
brag
just
about it.
Right.
Just look at like Michael Jordan. Why do people draw to like Mike? And I'll just name the people that I look at:
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Cristiano Ronaldo. Why do we look up to them? Because they're openly like, I'm the best,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
they rise up
Yeah.
to that level, and they say that, and people draw to that because
Yes.
none of us are really like that, right?
Yeah,
None of
yeah.
us go out there and say, I'm the best at this, because we know that if we say that, well, we better prove it, you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
these guys did it, and look where they are. So it is piece of your character where you do have to say,
Yeah.
and sometimes you don't have to be so outwardly about it. You could be that in here,
Right.
as opposed to like out there, and you can still come off as having a little humility, which I think is important to have.
Yeah.
But I think Hmong kids, I encourage you guys to have that mentality. I'm
Yeah.
not saying go be a jerk to everybody, but I'm just saying have
Yeah.
that inside of you.
Yeah.
Like I'm the shit.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of Hmong kids got that. Some people
Yeah.
say it and then don't have actions to back it up. You
Right.
got to back it up.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you're going to do that, you got to back it up.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be outwardly, but have it inside of you. I think that's how we're gonna see the Hmong community like really, really
Yeah.
thrive.
And help
you know,
each
Yeah.
other.
yeah, and
right?
help
Like,
each other
yeah.
I
too.
think
You know,
help each other, like brag about it instead of being like, oh, some.
yeah, you ain't gotta be timid
it's
about
just,
it.
like,
Be proud of
build
it.
people up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like help each other.
It'll
see
bring
their
haters.
worth.
It'll bring
Yeah.
haters too.
Yes,
When you're like that, you
yes,
bring haters for
yes,
sure.
Yeah.
But that's not energy you want anyway.
exactly
Find the energy
Yeah.
that people are
Yeah.
similar to you, and like I
Yeah.
said, that they are like that. Say things like that, but back it up. Because a
Right.
lot of people, I think too many of the OGs in my past or in my life have always been the OGs that tell me a lot of shit and don't do it.
Yeah.
And I hate it. And I always despise them for that.
Yeah.
You know, OG tell me how to be, then be that.
Yeah.
You know, lead by
Yeah.
example. So
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah. Anyway.
Tell them. No.
No, anyway,
Okay. But you got a podcast coming
Yeah.
up. You're going to be starting a podcast soon here.
Yeah, tell us
where
about you.
Where you're going to talk a lot more and get more in depth about like finances and stuff like that. So I love the idea. I love the theme, especially like me not having like any kind of financial training or anything like that in my background. Like that's super cool. So what is the podcast called? When are you going to get a role and
So
Yeah.
it's called End Business MSP. And so it's going to be about business, like just like I'm always very interested, like not just about the numbers piece, but
Mhm.
also like and like leaders and entrepreneurs. Like I think there's just like characteristics that are always really interesting in how somebody like decides to build something, how they scale something. Like these are all things like very strategic things that like are in people's heads, right?
Mhm.
That like I feel like we can all learn from. And so I that's going to be the premise of it. Is just
Okay.
really
And how do we spell that? Spell out the
in
End business, like IN and then BUS.
in business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, put
Just
you on the
is it
spot.
In business
Come on.
just in business podcast.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
just
in
asked
business.
because
Spelling
you know
bee.
sometimes
Yeah.
people have like weird spelling, and then you
Oh,
find another one
gotcha.
that's called in business with some Z's. And,
Oh.
you know, like
Yeah.
yeah, so people, you
So
want
it's
people to
literally
find
just
you.
like like
Yeah.
you know people
It's
who
not
are
a
in
spelling bee.
business, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Like just like people who are in business, right?
Okay.
And like what that constitutes, and you know like how they build, even like building a team, you
Okay.
know, like and like you know because I lead like a 15 people
Yep.
you know finance team, and so I think like I've learned a lot about what that means about who I am as a
Yep.
leader, you know, how
Yeah.
I motivate people, like because that's such a big piece of it, right? It's just like it's not just like having a bunch of people, it's like having people who are like really good at what they do, and like
Yeah.
you know, I think that's a great leadership quality that we don't think about. You know, it's just like when I'm starting to grow, like when I'm starting to have employees and I need them to do certain things to help build this thing, like how do I motivate them? How
Yeah.
do I inspire them? How do I keep them wanting to actually give like great service, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when we think about like Chick-fil-A, like
Yeah.
I mean, I know not everybody loves Chick-fil-A for, you know, other reasons. But like every time I go to Chick-fil-A, like the cashiers are always like with pleasure. Like
Right.
that little like thing that they teach their people
Mm.
to say, like it makes me feel good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like they're always like energetic, like versus like, you know, a Wendy's where you go and they're like, you know,
Yeah.
look
Yeah,
like they
yeah.
don't want to be there,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just like these are things about businesses that I feel like are really
Mm.
interesting for like certain types of business, like when you're starting to grow and have people and things like that. I think it's just fascinating to get, you know, some of these like strategies and things that people work on or are really good at to help, you know, other you know business owners. So
For sure. So we can find you on that pod is gonna be starting soon.
in the fall.
Okay, end of
Mhm.
fall,
Yep.
and that'll be probably on most platforms, I assume, or
Mhm.
Facebook.
Yep,
People can
yep,
find you.
yep.
What else do you have that's going on that people can either follow you or
Yeah.
look. Maybe they enjoy what you said today and they want to hear more of what you have to
Yeah.
say. Like, what are some other things? All that talk, is that still
Yeah.
you get still going?
We
Kinda-
yeah,
okay.
that's a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So
haven't.
so
Yeah.
wait for your podcast, which is going to be
Yeah.
coming out in the
Yeah.
fall.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, and we'll for sure like promote it, push it
Yeah.
out whenever it comes out. I'm super excited to hear more about it, especially like you know with the uprise of like monk podcasting. It's really cool just to hear different perspectives, different expertise, and then yet they still have that same monk thing
Yeah.
where I can relate to too. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. I think it was a great podcast. We went
Yeah.
almost an hour and a half, but you're the
Yeah.
first one that we really discussed finances with.
Yeah.
And because you hold the positions that where we knew with that, like we want to talk to you about this subject because it is your world. And Peng and I really appreciate that you took the time. First of all, it is J4 weekend, so we
Yes,
appreciate that
yeah.
you took the time to come kick it with us, talk with us, and also share your knowledge because I think this is a key piece of information that needs to be talked about.
Mhm.
That there's no taboo behind it. I don't know why there is a taboo,
Yeah.
why
Right.
it became that, but
Right.
we just really appreciate your time for you to come here, share your story, share your background, and then also pass on some knowledge to the rest of the Hmong community that listens to
Yeah.
our podcast. So
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
You
of
guys
course.
are doing amazing things, and honestly, it's consistency, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, I think when it comes down to money, it's just like being consistent. Even if all you can really do again is like 1% saving,
Yeah.
you know, just
Yeah.
do that, you know. So just being consistent, because after like 6 months, after a year, after 5 years, that becomes a big thing. So
For sure. All right, so we'll sign off. Last three things. keep a budget, don't keep up with the Joneses, and stay consistent.
There you go.
All right.
Look at that.
Sounds good.
Beautiful.